Good evening, and welcome to Copperfield's Books virtual event with Jaime Garzot in conversation with Jaime Messina. Before we dive in, I just want to remind you all to keep an eye on the chat box tonight. I'll be sharing discount codes and other info, and we at Copperfields have a huge lineup in May of events that I'll be sure to share. Some are even back in person, so we're excited. And for any questions or comments for tonight's guests, go ahead and submit them under the Q&A icon, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. So as you heard, we have two very compelling guests tonight, and I'm thrilled to hand it straight over to Jaime Messina, who's a mindset and empowerment coach who specializes in reprogramming the brain. Hi, Jaime. You want to get us started tonight?
Yes, thank you. All right, guys, I'm Jaime Messina, and like she said, I am the other Jaime. Lots of Jaimes here tonight. I am a mindset and empowerment coach who gets the opportunity to work with Jaime Garzot, who invited me here tonight to kind of lead this conversation about her book that just dropped today. Well, yesterday, but we're going to say it today because it's 4/20. Unconventional. Jaime, do you want to tell us a little bit, just give us a little brief background for those who are watching what this is?
Sure. So for the audience out there, thank you so much for being here. This is my first author event. This is my official launch. And before I get too far into what I've done to write the book, what I do want to say that some of you may not know is I'm a Sonoma County native. I was born and raised in Sonoma County, Montgomery High School graduate. And so very, very honored to be, with Copperfields tonight, here for this launch of my very first book, Unconventional. And so it is the story of my cannabis journey. And it's a journey that started back in 2009 when the medical cannabis industry was just in its infancy, really. And I was a fledgling business owner. I knew nothing about starting a business. And I decided to take an enormous risk, an enormous leap of faith, and follow my dream and do something that I had wanted to do for a long time. And that manifested into a cannabis retail establishment up in Shasta County, super conservative part of the state, as most of the audience probably knows. And so the journey that I tell is over an 11-year span of my tenure within the industry that started with, myself, one store, and I grew it into 3 businesses, 40 employees, 12 million in annual revenue to sell out to High Times in 2020. And, the story is not so much a how-to book about the industry, although any reader will definitely learn a ton about California's process and, the boots on the ground perspective, from a cannabis operator. But it's also the story of my journey as a human, my journey as an entrepreneur, and just all the ups and downs that I experienced along the way. And I hope it's entertaining. I hope it's inspiring. And that's what I'm here to share with the world, I guess, which is scary, but still really exciting.
Well, I can promise you it's entertaining. When I first started working with Jaime, she gave me the copy of her book, and I read the first page, and I was like, oh, this should be a movie. I can't wait to see it. It was talking about how she transports the money from the store to the bank, and I just envisioned this like big screen movie, super entertaining. So tell us a little bit about what was the purpose of the book? Like, what was your intent or your intention for writing this book?
So, I guess when the acquisition of the stores was closing towards, July and August of 2020, I had no inkling that this was, my next step as far as writing a book. I didn't really come up with this idea myself, but rather it was one of my merger and acquisition consultants who, kind of put the bug in my ear, and he said, hey, you need to write a book when this is all done. And I laughed him off. I went, yeah. And then, a couple weeks later, he said it again. I went, yeah, whatever. I'm not going to write a book. And then the third time he said it, I went, all right, why won't you let this go? Like, why, what's going on? He goes, look, you have an interesting story. The way that you started your first business when there were no regulations, there was no roadmap in 2009. Cannabis stores were not that popular, certainly in areas like San Francisco and LA, but in the more rural parts of the state, they were not common. And the way that I kind of built my stores, the approach that I took with my community, and then of course seeing the industry grow from nothing in 2009. We got some guidelines along the way from the Attorney General, and then we saw the state legislature regulate the medical cannabis industry, and then we saw Prop 64 pass in 2016. All of that is a tremendous amount of work and just a lot. And so it was Andrew that said, you should do this. You have a story to tell. I think that there's people that would benefit from hearing it. You need to write the book. And the idea stuck. And so I started writing in January of 2021, wrote it, and I'll tell that story probably here before too long, in a very short amount of time, and was lucky enough to find a publisher, and and here we are today. So, the intent behind the book is really to tell my story just as one person, from very humble beginnings, who do a lot of hard work, a lot of learning along the way, learning the hard way in some cases, saw my vision manifest. And that's really what it's about, is believing in yourself, believing in your vision, whatever that vision may be, and never, ever giving up, no matter what, just seeing it through. And so I hope that people that read it may be inspired to say, hey, if she can do that, if she can, see her vision through, come hell or high water, then so can I. And maybe inspire somebody to take that leap of faith and follow a passion that they have.
Yeah, and it's definitely inspirational. And I love, it says a memoir of entrepreneurism, politics, and pot, but it's your story beyond that. And I really love that piece of it, how you bring your own personal story in with what you were doing at that time. So let me ask you this. Did you have a reader audience in mind that you were hoping to reach when you wrote it, or even maybe after the fact? Because I know you weren't really planning on writing the book and it just kind of happened. Who are you hoping to reach with this?
Well, like I mentioned a minute ago, I definitely hope to inspire people, across all age demographics, across all industries, to believe in themselves enough that they decide to pursue something that they maybe thought that they couldn't do. And maybe it's jumping into the cannabis industry. I don't know, but that's really not my intent. Maybe it's opening another small business. Maybe it's opening a coffee shop, or maybe it's deciding to get involved in your community and run for that school board or run for that city council seat. Whatever it is that might be sitting there in the back of your head going, God, I've always wanted to do this thing. That's who I hope to hit. And that's who I hope that, I light a fire under them. They go, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then the other audience group is, potentially anybody from those other states beyond California, where, cannabis has been around a long time. We regulated in California, or excuse me, not regulated, but approved for cannabis use in 1996. That's a while ago. And so it's kind of crazy that there's still states out there today that haven't even developed medical permissibility. And so their conversation is so far behind where we are in California. And so it could be that, maybe it's somebody from a state or a local government within that state who has just recently adopted medical cannabis or even adult use cannabis. And they're kind of wondering, well, what does the industry look like from the inside? What's it all about? And so this can give them a little bit of insight into at least the type of operation that I ran, and how I ran it, and some of my philosophies. Gives a little bit of an overview on the state process and how things were within the legislature in 2015. That was the year that California's legislature decided to regulate its medical cannabis industry. And I say in the book, and California, while I think now could be a role model for some states, for a long time, and in some cases still is the poster child for how not to do things with regard to cannabis. And there's some lessons there. And those are some pretty strong words, and I'll stand by them because I was there. But, I think, so if you're outside of California looking in, there's some little nuggets there for you as well. And plus, if you just want to be entertained, I think that there's some of that as well. We'll see what the readers think. I mean, I figure if I can do one of three things with a reader, if I can inspire you, if I can entertain you, or if I can, teach you, educate you about something along the way, then I will consider my book a success. But of course, I hope that I do all three of those things in the book. We'll just have to see.
Well, I can say you definitely did all three for me. So win for your number one for the first reader. um, so yeah, I mean, success leaves clues, and you paved the way, and it's going to help a lot of people. That's pretty cool. Now, let me ask you this: first time author, did you have any challenges when you were writing this book? And if so, what was your biggest challenge when writing it?
So, there were a few. I would say the biggest one came immediately, and so this was right around the time when the acquisition was closing, and so I'm driving from Santa Rosa up to Redding, where my stores were in Shasta County, and so I have a lot of screen time, and I've got this idea, and I've percolating in my mind, and so as I'm driving the 3-hour drive, 3.5 hours, I would get ideas, and I'd pull out my phone, and I'd dictate a note, and just kind of keeping a running list of things that I wanted to talk about in the book. So that list kind of sat there and didn't do a lot through the fall of 2020. And then it was really beginning of 21 that I thought, all right, I've got to do this. I've got to start, the actual writing process. And I'm looking at my laptop across the room going, I don't want to open that thing, right? Writer's block. And I thought, I don't see myself, just knowing my personality and knowing my energy level, I guess is a good way. I didn't see myself sitting my butt in a chair, like clacking away at a keyboard for, I don't know, weeks, months on end while I put this manuscript together. I just that gave me a little bit of a rash, and I can't do that. And so because, and for those of you that do read the book, unconventionality is like core, it's in my core. So I can't seem to do anything in a normal, traditional way. I thought I can't write this book the way that probably most people would, pen and paper, no, computer, like keyboard, blank screen, Word document, no. So then it's like, okay, well, how else am I going to do it? Because I'm very solution oriented, and I was going to find a way, gosh darn it. So I decided that I was going to download Google Docs onto my phone, and I'd go out for a walk. I'd think about things that I wanted to hit that day. And then I'd go down to the beach, and I'd open up Google Docs, and I'd hit the microphone icon, and I'd march up and down the beach while I would talk my book out into my phone. And I would do that until one of two things happened. Either I drained my phone battery, or I covered the 2 sections that I wanted to hit that day. And it was a good way to do it for me, just because everything was already here. I wasn't working through like plot, character development. I could never write fiction. That is so appalling to me that, for myself to do. But it was all here. So I just needed to get it out. And it was a very quick way to do it, because no matter how good of a typist you are, everybody talks faster than they type. And so I would get back to my house, and maybe not that day, maybe not the next day, but eventually when I would go back to edit, I would just pull up Google Docs, and there would be, what I'd written that day at the beach. And so that was a very unconventional way to write my book, but super effective for me, and also a little bit entertaining, because we've all sent those voice texts like, God, what did I just write? What did I just send? So there were certainly moments when I'm going through the editing process, it's like, what was I trying to say there? And usually I figured it out. 1 or 2 times I didn't, but I worked through it. And so the challenge of getting through that first obstacle of, oh my God, how am I going to sit down and write? And that terror, that potential writer's block, I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that. Developing my own way to do it, executing on that way, and then just making it work for me. And so I like to tell this story because, again, that's something I hope maybe gets other people to think outside the box. If maybe it's writing, maybe it's something else, like just be solution oriented, figure it out, and know yourself, know what works for you, and then go out and find a path for yourself. So that was definitely a challenge that I overcame. And I had fun. I had fun because, my office was the beautiful ocean.
Yes. And you said it was 2021. So this was during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Got you out of your house as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
On the cake. So you mentioned the title in there and how you are basically the word it describes you, unconventional.
Mm-hmm.
how did you come up with the title, by the way?
It was a group project with my publisher. I went through a couple different working titles for the manuscript, and that was something that was a collaboration, and definitely one that I voted in favor of, just because of how I've conducted my life and how I've solved problems along the way. It's just and I think I said this the other night on the Instagram. It's like, I shot out of the womb 2 months early. I was not going to be born in the conventional way. I was, premature. So even out of the gate, like literally out of the womb, I was doing things differently. And that seems to be just, part of my mission on earth, I suppose.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So first time author. Now, what chapters in the book were most difficult to write? And we'll start there. What was there any that were difficult to write? Which ones were they?
Sure. There's the book is in large part the story of my journey as an entrepreneur, but there are a couple flashbacks to my childhood and dealing with the death of my mom at an early age, a traumatic death, and then how kind of the fallout from that sculpted my personality and shaped some core things in me that really, I think that I now attribute to my success as a business person, as a businesswoman. And so I think those were important things that I convey, which is why I flash back to that point in my life when I was 8 years old, 9, 10. But it's hard looking back, and especially when there's painful memories there and there's trauma there. And so, and then also looking back with how things are today and kind of, I don't know, not like building the bridge between my family, but like just being cognizant of that. And because it was a painful time. It was a painful time. And I'm kind of stumbling because I don't want to give away too much that's in the book. So I apologize there. So that was definitely a challenging chapter to write without question. And then during the time when my first store was open, there were some very scary times with my ex-husband. And then even later, gosh, that was 2017 with another person. So I don't know that I would, well, traumatic, yes. Scary, yes. And so anytime you revisit those, they're always here. They never go away, but it's not like I think about these things on the daily. So dredging them up and putting them onto the paper and really having to bring them into color, to live with them, to sit with those moments and to sit with those scenes. Because that's how I started to look at them, as like it's scenes in my book, which helped me keep some distance, safekeeping for me. That was difficult. But they're important parts of my story, which is why they're in the book. And so I suffered through but it was still not totally comfortable, the writing. And so I have a new appreciation for people that write even deeper about their past and things even more traumatic than what I went through. It's difficult, but also cathartic. And so there's that. I mean, I always have to look on the positive side. So there was
awesome. Well, I'm yes. Grateful that you shared that with us in the book. Like those chapters actually touched my heart, and I know all the readers will probably feel the same. Now, on the other hand, were there chapters that were really exciting to write?
I think one of the things that I am so incredibly grateful for, even today and all along my journey, is the support that I had from the community, and not just from its leaders, but it's the chambers of commerce, the law enforcement. I was absolutely blessed to work with some incredible law enforcement jurisdictions during my tenure, and I did a lot of outreach, and so some of that amicability was definitely earned, but just the support that I had all around. And then at the top of the list of people that I had support from was my team, the staff that I had over the 11-year period. I mean, I had some absolute rock stars that believed in what I was doing, how I was doing it, and wanted to be a part of it. And that was so exciting. And so I tell their story, a couple of them, I share their stories because they are the ones that inspired me. And so writing about that and remembering, just how it was challenging. It was difficult at times, but it was so rewarding. Those chapters were fun to write. And then I will say also that the whole writing process in general, because like I already mentioned, my office was the beach, and just being out there every day with the water and the sand and the waves. I mean, it was spectacular. It was a great office to sit in and write my book.
Yeah. Does your team know about the book now that?
Yeah, they do. And so they're excited. I've been getting texts and Facebook messages all, like for a while, and they're all excited, and they ordered it on Amazon, and they there's a few of them who I do mention by name, several actually. So they're, I think, excited to see their names in print, which is cool for them.
Awesome. So you mentioned that, just the process of writing the book was really fun for you. You talked about walking on the beach and all that. Was there anything else that you just really enjoyed about this whole process as a first-time author?
After spending 11 years in the cannabis industry, and I was in the trenches, right? Not just from the stores, but involved at the state level with the regulatory process, in 2015, advocating for responsible cannabis regulation. I was involved a tremendous amount at the local level, doing community outreach, not just for my own city and my own county, but surrounding counties. It was just a lot. And so like all consuming, I mean, eating, breathing cannabis all day, every day. So to shift gears and to learn about something new, like the publishing process and the writing process, and how a book gets made, was completely out of my comfort zone. It was also really exciting. I mean, this is the first time in 11 years that I've really sunk my teeth into something new. And so that was fascinating, completely uncharted territory for me. And, I'm one of those people that if I'm going to do a thing, I'm going to learn all about it. And, I'm a research nerd to begin with. And so Google is my absolute best friend. And it was, and so that was just incredible to learn about a completely new topic, a completely new industry, a new process. It was really invigorating. And I absolutely loved every second of the writing and then subsequent publishing process.
Was there anything that surprised you about it?
How important the cover design is. I mean, you think about and I never knew. I mean, but then you think about it, and so we spent so much time on that cover, and it was never. I never envisioned my face on the cover. It was when I was thinking about cover designs, I envisioned just text, kind of block font. But then when I did the photo shoot with the photographer up at Malibu, I was just doing like an author headshot, like kind of a cool one at the beach. Of course, it's always the beach. That photo came back, and so we all looked at it and we went, wow, that could be the cover. And then what font and what colors do we add? And so just that was surprising, just how involved the cover design process is, and how important the cover is, because you have that much time to try to grab a reader and get them to oh, this looks interesting enough to pick it up, and then hopefully enough to flip it over and read what it's about, and then of course get them to purchase it and read it. That's the most important, get them to read it. So that was surprising, but again, I just soaked it all up. It was something new.
Yeah, I actually love I feel like you're kind of looking into my soul.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Oh, she's interesting. Let's read this. So let me ask you this, and we didn't discuss this question, but was there anything that surprised you about yourself through the writing process that you learned about yourself?
So yeah, I mean, one of the chapters that does flash back to my childhood, losing my mom, and some of the feelings and the attitudes, ideas, perspectives that I learned from that with regard to femininity, my own relationship with women in general, that really started to change. And that subject in itself has been in constant evolution. And I also think that process of writing that chapter really was kind of the catalyst for what happened in December and January of this year, which was the realization that at 49 years old, I'm gay, and came out to my friends and family in January of 2022, and have now, and kind of reinventing my life again at 49, which is something I never thought I would be doing. But the seed for that, I really think started writing that chapter about my mom and how her death kind of shaped in my formative years, how I viewed women in general and femininity and just feminism within myself and the world at large. That started then, and really kind of repressed a lot of my feelings towards women. And that all started coming alive when I wrote those chapters in, gosh, that would have been February 21. That really just kind of literally came out in December and January of 22. So that was another surprise.
I bet.
They're never ending.
So I just want to tell you, somebody wrote a message that says, we're watching from a collective and we just love you and appreciate everything you do for the community.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I wish I knew who it was, but thank you so much for your support.
Yeah. All right. So what is on your wish list as far as success? Like, what's coming up? What's on your wish list?
Oh, wish list. So, it is my goal, my hope, my intent to inspire people. And to do that, I've got to get people to read the book. And so, that means getting word out about it. So of course, and I'm going to say, of course, I'm going to assume that everybody that writes a book wants to be, a New York Times bestselling author. Of course, they want that. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I want that for myself. Mm-hmm. And then I would love for the book to get in the hands of Reese Witherspoon. I mean, this is an incredible, a powerful, incredible woman who has done so much to support and empower other women, other entrepreneurs, other authors. And so I would love to get the book on her book club list. I think that would be, I gotta say, that's at the top of my list. That's even above New York Times. Like, sorry, New York Times, but I'm going to go with Reese Witherspoon all day long. And so, I think that would be phenomenal. And it's a long shot, of course. I'm a debut author with like, I don't have 10,000 people following me on anything. But you got to aim for something.
You never know when the universe plans, how it conspires to make it happen.
Right.
Who's listening. So I love that you put that out there. We do have a question before we get to the final couple questions. How did you get into the cannabis industry?
So this is something that I do talk about in the book. So this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler alert, but I have always wanted to have my own business. That was something that had been kind of a dream of mine since like probably my mid-20s. And it was something that I never was able to execute. I was never able to either hit on the right idea or feel motivated enough, but it was something that was always back there, again, percolating, that I wanted to do. And then in 2008, I started to have some challenges with sleep. I've always been a great sleeper. And then my brain started to come awake at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And so through that process, I tried cannabis, really not for the first time, but for the first time medically. And, I went to a couple of the stores that were around at the time, and they were a little questionable, I guess. And I saw the opportunity. I thought, you know what, this is something that I want to try. I want to try to develop and build out a store that is not necessarily focused around the stoner culture only. I wanted to build something that was more inclusive, that went beyond the 420 lifestyle. That nothing against that at all. That's awesome. That's great. Here we are on 420 doing this event, but I felt that it could be a little limiting, and I don't like that. I wanted to be more inclusive, and so that was kind of what an idea that I had. Let's see if I can do this, and kind of all of all of the lights turned green for me. And that's something else I talk about in the book is, paying attention, watching for, paying attention to, and following the green lights as they show up, because they are there, they will show up. My job was and is to watch for them and then hit the accelerator. And so that was something that kind of lined up, and I took a huge risk, opened the store, and and here I am. Never saw a lot of it coming, but yeah.
Awesome. So we have another question here. This is my favorite question for you. Do you have any plans to write again?
Oh, so, I think if anybody had asked me that before December of last year, I would have said highly unlikely, only because, like I've already said, I'm not a fiction writer. I've never had like a creative streak in that way. I get creative in other ways, but writing has never been one of them. Never took that in school. I'm an English major, but creative writing, no. And then if you think this book really took 11 years to come together, 2009 to 2020, that's a lot of time to build up material. And so using that timeline, it would be a while before I wrote again, right? You got to build up content. However, given the kind of complete turn that my life took at the end of the year, and again, with the realization that I'm gay and this coming out so much later in life than most people, maybe there's another book there. I don't know yet. I think maybe it's still early, time will tell. Just in the short time since December to now, there's been a lot that, I could probably fill a couple chapters, but the book isn't written yet. Again, it's still here, and maybe it's a story that doesn't need to be told. Maybe it is. So in answer to the question, will I write again? I'm going to give you a good solid maybe. And that's probably as good as I'm going to get. But if you'd asked me a minute ago, and by a minute, I mean, before December, I would have said, no, probably not. I'm going to be a one-hit wonder if I'm that lucky at all. But now I'm going to say a good solid maybe.
Yeah, well, the seed is planted. So that's a good thing. And by the way, guys, if you're watching, please type in any questions that you have for Jaime, because I'm gonna continue to ask her the ones that come up. So let me ask you this. What has been this is from Leslie, by the way. What has been the most shocking change with the new laws and regulations? You still keep up to date with all that, right? Even though you sold your stores?
Oh, that's a really difficult question for me to answer, Leslie. I apologize. Because, when I sold the stores in August of 2020, I completely unplugged. I took a decent amount of a break, and then I started to write the book, and the book was just, I've been living, breathing book since January 2021. So I am not equipped to answer that, not qualified to answer that question. I do know, I will say this, because I think this has bearing on the industry, even from when I was, advocating for regulation in 2015, and with Prop 64 that was passed in 2016. One of the things that I think we're coming up on is 2023 is when the unlimited grow, I forget what license that is for cultivation, but we're coming up on that. And I know that was something the small farmers absolutely hated. They didn't want unlimited canopy size, because that's, it gives a little more power to the bigger players. They can, the economy of scale, they can mass produce and, push out a lower price product to market. And what I do know from my time in the industry is that price is a factor. And it just is. And the more cultivators that come to market and the more people that mass produce, the price is going to continue to drop. That's not a good thing. I'm not saying that is. In fact, I think quite the opposite. But so I don't know what's happening with that unlimited canopy size. It was a hotly contested issue back in 15 and 16. And since we are coming up on that, I would think that is definitely forefront in the conversation. But that's about all I'm equipped to answer. So I'm sorry if that's a disappointing answer for you, but I I'm unplugged. Absolutely.
Well, I have a question about that. When you were involved, what was the shocking law or regulation that came about, like as you were going through the process?
Yeah. So as you know, and maybe, I don't know if I said this at the beginning, but, you know, I was a retailer, and with the exception of a small edible line that I created in, like, gosh, when was that? 2012 through 2016. That was really all I did, you know, was retail. So from a retailer's perspective, when I was in the industry and we got the regulations, I think they first started coming out in 2016 and 17, that said everything had to come into the retailer pre-packed, pre-weighed, pre-labeled, and they essentially took away those big deli style service with canisters of cannabis, where, you know, the customer could have this incredibly sensory experience where you can see it, you can smell it, and you can, you know, choose like, oh, I want that bud right there, and see what that weighs, and then pay appropriately. Just like, you know, you go to the deli counter and you want that steak right there. California was the first state in the entire nation to say no more deli style. And the customers, oh my God, I thought there was going to be mutiny. And from a retailer's perspective, it's a much easier way to manage when everything comes in, you know, looking like this, not, you know, a big old thing. So I understand why the state did it. There's less room for error. There's, you know, and then even taxes come in to make sure that, you know, customers are being charged the actual amount, because again, sales tax is based on what's charged. So that was, the customers did not like that. And I had I won't say anybody got violent, but there were some angry people in my store when they heard that we were taking away their big jars of cannabis. From a retailer's perspective, that was probably one of the most challenging.
Interesting. Okay, so Leslie has another question. What advice would you give somebody who is just getting into the industry as a business owner?
Read the regulations. They're lengthy, they're tedious, they're dull, but they're going to be incredibly helpful for you to learn exactly what the state wants, and also to learn kind of how the state's looking at the industry, and maybe get you to think about some things that about whatever segment whatever link in the supply chain you're going to go into that you haven't thought about before. So I would say you got to start there. You got to read those freaking regs. And you could hire a consultant. I mean, you could, and because they've all read them, but I don't know that that's the best way to go. It's harder to read them yourself. It's more time consuming. You'll save money. So there's that. But I would start there. And, you know, I think in today's world, it's easy to kind of say, well, you know, I can't do it, or it costs too much, or only the big guys are getting in, you know, maybe. But if you want to do it, and if you have a vision for how you want your business to go, whatever that business is, maybe it's a retail establishment, maybe it's a manufacturing operation, maybe it's a cultivation site, I don't know. If you have a vision, read the regs, start thinking about how you want it to go, build it in your mind, and you're going to see it. Just make it happen for yourself. Do it. I mean, I wouldn't let anything stop you. The industry is still so new, even in California, that there's so much room for growth and still so much opportunity. I would say just go for it.
So I know you're checked out for a while since you left, but where did you see, or where do you see the industry going? Is there anything that you kind of can predict that's going to come up?
I think the next, what needs to happen for the industry, and I don't know this is quite the question you're asking, but what has to happen for the industry, I don't care what state you're in, we've got to get the federal law changed. We have to see full federal legalization, because, you know, like the opening chapter, I talk about what I was dealing with, how I was dealing with a lot of the surplus cash that I was keeping on site, and how I was, you know, moving that to an offsite location to diversify my assets, so I don't have all my cash. It's like a sitting duck in one of my buildings. Like, that's just ridiculous. But it's also ridiculous that a legitimate industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry, cannot access the banking system. Now, there are some exceptions. Sonoma County has, you know, at least 2 financial institutions that I know of that will bank the industry. And I am so grateful that the area has those too. In particular, Community First Credit Union. I got super excited when I learned about them. However, they were unable to help me with my stores in Shasta County because they're a community credit union. So, there are bright spots like Community First, and I applaud the work that they're doing. We need more credit unions. We need more financial institutions within our state to get on board to start banking this industry. It's ridiculous that operators like myself, who are on the smaller side, were dealing with the cash burden the way that I was. And it's, again, not just a California problem. It's not just a United States problem. I mean, I think it's really global, but we are, here in the United States, we still need to get access to the banking system. And that means we have to change the federal law without question. So, that's something that we've got to change sooner rather than later. And at least there's conversations happening in Congress, but, it's, it's slow going.
Will happen. All right. So I guess the final question that I have anyways, is, what are you most excited about moving forward?
I'm just excited to be able to share this story with whoever wants to read it. I mean, if somebody can like I've said this before, but if somebody can be inspired by my story, if somebody can learn from my mistakes, if I can make somebody laugh, I'm just excited to be able to share my journey, and maybe, not just for people in California, but through the rest of the country and throughout the world. And like I said, my hope is to inspire, and I'm glad that it's finally released and that it's available, and people that want to read it can read it. And so if anybody out there watching decides to purchase it and read it, thank you so much. I'm very grateful, and I'm just grateful to be here and have an audience that I can't see.
You just got a thank you for writing the book. And another anonymous. So final words for everybody watching.
Just, I think it's so easy for, to get caught up in our daily lives and all of the, the vortex of social media, and maybe it's spouse and kids and all that, to kind of push our dreams to the back and to forget about the vision that we have. And I would say, let's not do that. Let's remember the dreams that we have, follow your passion, take it off the shelf, dust it off, open it back up, and maybe bring it to life in a way that you haven't felt you could before. But, just believe in your dream, believe in your ability to execute on it, and go out and make it happen for yourself. That's my goal for everybody.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. Jaime, number 3.
Thank you both so much. It was, I felt like I was watching two good friends. It was a lovely conversation, and we're getting great feedback. So I really want to thank you both for that tonight, and Jaime for tuning in from the East Coast. I know it's getting late for you. For those of you wondering, yes, this is being recorded. I will be sending a follow-up email tomorrow. It'll have the link to the recording. It'll have links to purchase the book, the discount code, and links to both of their websites. So we'll get you all the info. On that, yeah, want to thank you guys again, and hopefully we can do it again in person real soon.
That'd be great. Thank you to all of the Copperfields team, and to, both Jaimes. I appreciate your time, and thank you to the audience for watching.
Thank you.